Thank you all for joining us today. We know this is a difficult and uncertain time for a lot of us. The Chamber is trying to do what we can to provide information and resources to our member businesses. We are also grateful for our partner chambers who are each doing great work serving the business community. For today's program, we have the following sponsors. Tamara Fields is our moderator for today. She is the Office Managing Director for Accenture in Austin, and she's responsible for bringing innovation to clients, recruiting and retaining top talent, and strengthening Accenture's impact in the Austin community. Tamara is also a board member of the Texas Conference for Women, Austin Chamber of Commerce, and the Paul Quinn College, a historically Black college in Dallas. Tamara recently won the Austin Chamber of Commerce Greater Austin Business Award for Executive Leadership and was named the Texas Access Black Alumni Network 2019 Legacy Alumnus of the Year. And she also made the Austin Business Journal's 2019 Profiles in Power list and received the Central Texas chapter of the Texas Diversity Council's 2018 Diversity First Award. And now over to Tamara.
Thank you so much, Milan. I really appreciate the introduction. I wanted to say good morning to everyone who's tuning in to this broadcast. I want to give a special thanks to the Austin Chamber of Commerce. I think it's really important during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic that communication is very important, and I appreciate them putting on these seminars to help our business community stay up to speed on the resources that are available to them. As she indicated, I work for Accenture. I run our Austin office, and also I'm the Director of Operations for our South Market Unit. And overall, being responsible for the 3,500 plus resources we have here, we've all been impacted by COVID-19. I want to give a special thanks to the Texas Workforce Commission because I recognize that they have been front and center as a result of the impacts of COVID-19 and appreciate their willingness to support these seminars to make sure that we get resources out to the individuals and to the small business community and businesses that are impacted by the pandemic. I have two people to introduce to you today, and the first one I want to introduce to you is Shay Everett. She is the Senior Advisor, as you see noted on the slide, for Childcare and Pre-K Partnerships at Texas Workforce Commission. She supports stakeholders across Texas to increase access to quality programming through the development of partnerships between childcare subsidy programs, which we'll talk about today, and the public school pre-K. She's had a strong career in childhood education research and policy efforts, and we appreciate you, Shay, being on the call today because obviously this is a very important discussion. I also want to introduce another person who has had a strong career in helping small businesses and has been a part of the history of our society in terms of other economic impacts we've had to deal with, like past recessions and other items. He's the director initiatives and the Managed Skills Development Fund Department at the Texas Workforce Commission. He has 30 years experience in workforce development industry, and he serves as a liaison for small businesses, industry associations, and workforce and economic development organizations. So, Dell's going to be very essential to our conversation today and the questions that I'm sure all of us have in terms of what are the federal and state resources that are available to businesses as we encounter the impacts as a result of COVID. He has some slides that he's going to walk us through from the Texas Workforce Commission, he and Shay. And then after we walk through those slides, we're going to open it up for Q&A. We are very interested in making sure that we spend time to answer the questions that you have. Again, the Chamber's goal is to make sure that we are communicative in providing resources. And I myself also serve on the board of the Austin Chamber of Commerce. So thanks again, Shay and Dell. And Dell, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Good morning. Thank you, Tamara, for that introduction. And thank you to the Austin Chamber for inviting Texas Workforce Commission to be a part of this very important webinar today. As Tamara mentioned, we are committed to being a resource to Texans across the state, here in Austin, Houston, Abilene, wherever you may be. We know we're all impacted by COVID-19 in one way or the other. We're particularly sensitive to the fact that many of our Small businesses have had to reduce their workforces, reduce the hours they work, or in some cases had to temporarily close their businesses. We're going to do everything that we can, working with the Governor's Office of Economic Development and Tourism and Governor Abbott's office, as well as the commission, the three commissioners that we have, the commissioner representing employers, Aaron Demerson, commissioner representing labor, Julian Alvarez, and our chair, Brian Daniel, who has asked that the Office of Employer Initiative pay particular attention and to take on a very pivotal role in assisting businesses across the state with their needs as it relates to COVID-19. So to that extent, I would like to go through just a few slides about our services. Shay Everett, who was also introduced, will also discuss childcare services during this presentation. Okay, so a couple of things we're going to cover. We're making sure that we, again, talk about what we can do to assist businesses. We know that we're interested in helping you manage or prevent layoffs if necessary. We want to make sure you know that we have an available set of resources across the state. We have 28 workforce development boards. We'll talk about a little bit about those and the services they're offering. And then we know that, you know, during this time, there's still an opportunity for businesses to continue to maybe retooling and are looking for workers. And there are job seekers out there who are also looking for work. And we will talk a little bit about the job matching system and training services we have. And also included in this discussion will be about child care providers and essential workers. Next slide. So when you talk about managing layoffs and preventing them, when you get to a point that you may not be able to avoid having to reduce your workforce or lay off employees, then at this point we would talk about introducing you all to rapid response. We prefer that businesses contact us first or contact the local workforce solutions first before they make that decision, so we can talk about all of the available services that you may want to consider before having a layoff. So our rapid response services brings that opportunity to you all as businesses to discuss what the options are. And hopefully, if a layoff is unavoidable, we will also share what we can do in that case. Slide. So on this slide, when we talk about managing layoffs or preventing them, you know, one of the programs we would introduce you all to is the Shared Work Program. And that program is a program managed by the Unemployment Insurance Division of the Workforce Commission. And it really provides an employer with an opportunity to avoid or explore alternative to layoffs. In this case, if an employer has to reduce their workforce, then they may reduce their hours between the hours of their workers between 10 and 40%, and at least 10% of that workforce in that particular unit, then they may apply for a program known as Shared Work. And that program allows the employee and the employer to both benefit in that the employee would likely qualify to receive some unemployment insurance, as well as continue to get some wages while they're still working for the hours they're working. And to the extent that that can, it will help them be whole in terms of their income. But it saves both the employee and the employer and provides them an opportunity to continue the production even at a reduced time frame. So that's a Shared Work program, and you can get more information about that at our Shared Work website. Should you have to go to the full layoff of your staff, good, next slide, please. We have a program called the Mass Claims for Unemployment Benefits. This program, you know, at this point, it assists the employers with and the employees by allowing for claims to be filed in bulk, so to speak. You know, it's in mass, and so that the employer provides all of the information on the impacted employees, the required employee identification information, et cetera, wages, time, work dates to the UI Mass Claims Office. And that claim is then processed or filed on behalf of all of the employees in a mass claims procedure. And so it avoids the employer having to respond to every individual claim that is filed by by an employee, or the employee themselves having to call into TWC directly and file a claim for unemployment insurance. And so that alleviates some of the additional work that's necessary when someone has to do a layoff. And again, this is something that we would talk with you about during the rapid response and the best way to manage that. I will point out that, typically we require that businesses have at least 5 days in advance before they submit the mass claims, do it 5 days in advance of the planned layoff. But in this case, for COVID-19, we are waiving that 5-day requirement. And again, for more information about the mass claims program, I have the website there, and it's the you can click on it directly and you'll find all the forms ready for you to download and to complete, etc. Slide. So what are some of the important things to know about unemployment insurance at this point? And I'm just going to highlight some of the key changes recently. As I mentioned before, we have the full support, and the state has the full support of Governor Abbott and his team of the state agencies. And so one of the initial steps taken was to waive the 1-week waiting period that is typically required for unemployment insurance. And that allows individuals, claimants, to receive payments faster than they ordinarily would. And so this is a great benefit. The other is that at this point, we're also waiving the work search requirements. And this doesn't mean that someone couldn't look for work, but we're not requiring that you have to look for work at this time. Again, if there's an opportunity to go to work, and because there is a need for essential workers in different industries in this Austin and the county, as well as across the state, then by all means, we want you to take those opportunities to go back to work. But we're not requiring a work search at this time. So employers in particular may have some questions about all I've talked about, the mass claims or the shared work program. And we do have a call line specifically for businesses, and that's the 800-939-6631 number. Please call 800-939-6631 if you have any specific questions about, if you've done this already, you've filed a claim, you've submitted a mass claim, you've submitted a shared work, and you haven't heard anything, and it's been more than a few days, more than 5 to 10 days, then feel free to call that number and ask for additional information. Slide, please. So I put this graph in here because the CARES Act, which many of you all are familiar with, is, or the $2 trillion stimulus bill, as it's referred to commonly, but CARES Act, it does provide some additional benefits for individuals that are impacted by COVID-19. But I'd like to point out here is that, in particular, one of the benefits are to independent contractors, self-employed individuals who otherwise may not have had wages reported. They're 1099 employees. That they have they're eligible to receive benefits now under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And these benefits, again, coupled with additional $600 that's available as well for a period available until July 31st, 2020. So this chart just gives you an idea of who's eligible, what's available, and the period of time that folks may be eligible for unemployment insurance and for the pandemic and emergency unemployment compensation or the pandemic unemployment assistance. Slide. So a couple of federal legislation has come out, and you all may all be familiar with these, but just we find it's important to let employers know about some of the other federal legislation that have come out besides the CARES Act. This Families First Coronavirus Act does provide for paid sick leave and an expansion of the Family and Medical Leave Act. And these are related to COVID-19. And so if you're an employer with fewer than 500 employees And also, if you're an employer in either the public sector or nonprofit, you are an employee's eligible for up to 2 weeks of fully or partially paid sick leave. And these benefits are available between April 1, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. The next slide, I'll have some links there that, the Department of Labor has very good information, and they're updating this frequently. So I don't usually go into it very much because I know that the information and clarity is coming out frequently. But these requirements for employer paid leave requirements and the employee paid leave rights are very well discussed and clarified on these sites that are available from the U.S. Department of Labor. Slide. Okay. So as I transition to talking about some of our local services, and Shay in a minute here, just want you guys to know, as I've spoken about earlier, is that we're still open for business. I mean, that's the Texas Workforce Commission and the 28 workforce development boards across the state that operate the more than 180 or so workforce solution centers right here in Austin, Travis County, and the rural counties surrounding. We have the Rural Workforce Solutions capital area, which is Travis County, and we have Workforce Solutions Rural Capital, which are the surrounding counties around, which cover the surrounding counties around Travis County. And they're open, whether many of our centers are not open for public face-to-face because of the stay-at-home requirements. However, many are continuing to do here in Austin, here in the rural communities, Bastrop or Marble Falls area, are able to do virtual services. And they're conducting virtual job fairs, they're conducting virtual other events, allowing individuals to still seek assistance and talk to someone about what they may need and get help. So employers, if you have opportunities and you're looking for employees, employer services is still available. Just contact the local Workforce Solutions office and they will guide you through how they can assist you. Job seekers, those are people who've been laid off or have been looking for work for a time. Again, there are still job postings out there, including some at TWC, by the way. You all may have seen some postings for some temporary help for the unemployment insurance call centers. And so we do encourage you all to look at those opportunities and know that we're still open for business, both at the state level and at the local level. And if you're interested in finding out more about what your Workforce Solutions Office or Workforce Development Board locally is doing, I encourage you to visit the website. Slide. At this point, I'll transition to Shay to discuss some of the childcare services for essential workers. Shay?
Thank you so much, Dale. So we know that many essential workers are parents, and it's so important that they have access to safe childcare environments during this pandemic. So the Texas Workforce Commission has been taking a number of actions along with state partners. The first with getting parents access to understanding what their child care options are is the Frontline Child Care website. So the governor recently announced the creation of the Frontline Child Care Task Force, which involves a number of state agencies as well as external partners, and TWC is part of that task force. We have created this website, frontlinechildcare.texas.gov, that helps parents understand their childcare options in regulated settings, including childcare centers and childcare homes where there are a number of children there, as well as in their own homes with a partnership through care.com. The website also outlines financial assistance opportunities, which I'll talk about momentarily. It includes information for employers on how to help their employees find childcare. One of the most exciting features of this website is the Frontline Childcare Availability Portal, which is a searchable map that allows parents to search for childcare near their home or work by choosing the age of their child and their zip code. And it shows all the different options that are available, it'll also indicate whether the childcare provider is open or closed. It will indicate the number of seats that a child care provider has open for different age groups. So this is a fantastic resource for parents as they are looking into their options so that they can go to work. The financial assistance I mentioned, if you'll go back and stay on that same slide. Thank you. For the last few decades, TWC has provided financial assistance to low-income parents who are working or going to school. This is typically referred to as the subsidy program. Recently, we extended this financial assistance to be offered to parents who are essential workers, and we increased the income threshold to be at 150% of the state median income, which is about $99,000 of annual salary for a family of 3. So this is available at the link that is shown on the screen, where parents can apply directly with one of their 28 local workforce boards. And it, of course, is based on the availability of funding at the local workforce board. And there are certain groups of essential workers who are prioritized, such as healthcare workers. There is no copayment at this time for parents to be able to, so that this is fully covered by the Texas Workforce Commission. So we welcome parents to reach out to their local workforce boards to apply for this financial assistance if they are an essential worker. Next slide. So we also know that this emergency has hit childcare providers very hard, with many children staying home and in a safe environment, which is great, but it also is hurting their bottom line. And it's been very difficult because many of them are small businesses. It's been very difficult for them to stay afloat. And it is our priority to have childcare in good supply for when this emergency is over. We want to make sure that we help childcare providers now so that they can keep operating in the future. So we've accomplished a lot in the last few weeks. I'll go through these first items that are active supports that we have been able to get out there for childcare providers. Of course, small business assistance and unemployment benefits like Dale is talking about, but also the definition of essential workers includes childcare employees, which is great. For the 130,000 children that were in that childcare subsidy program before the pandemic began, we are continuing to pay childcare providers for those children, regardless of whether those children are attending. That's on top of paying for essential workers as well. And since providers are taking so many extra precautions right now with smaller class sizes and more cleaning, our commissioners recently increased the payment amount by 25%. So we're actively doing what we can to pay fair amounts for the children that are receiving the financial assistance subsidy through TWC, and that helps those childcare providers. We have also, through the governor's Frontline Child Care Task Force, have developed a food supply purchase authorization form, and that is meant to help childcare providers that we've heard they're going into grocery stores, and it's not all grocery stores, but some are limiting the amount of milk or toilet paper or whatever any one person can purchase. That's difficult when a childcare center is looking to buy those items for their staff and all the children in care. And so this authorization form allows the childcare provider to take that form and a copy of their operating permit and request for some waiving of the limit on the supplies that they are looking to purchase. And that's only applicable where the retailer is limiting supply and where the retailer has supply. So there are many empty shelves. It doesn't apply to the items that the retailer does not have in stock. Only those items that are in stock and that are being capped. through the Frontline Child Care Availability Portal, that searchable website, child care providers now have a venue that they've never had before, where they can direct parents to their program by updating their availability as often as they want. It's a very simple process that takes less than a minute. And Child Care Licensing has been our partner in this and have been sending out these notifications to child care providers. There's also a new Texas Workforce Commission webpage that we keep up to date with all of the changing policies and forms for child care providers who are participating in the subsidy program. And of course, on that frontlinechildcare.texas.gov website, there is a page dedicated to child care providers to give them the latest health and safety information and other information that they may need. We also have a number of supports in progress that we're working on right now. We're working on getting critical cleaning supplies to child care providers. We know if it's anything like me, they're having a hard time finding cleaning supplies on the shelves of grocery stores. And so we are looking to order those for child care providers who are in the subsidy program with us, and also updating their availability on that Frontline Child Care webpage. So that is something that we're working on actively. We are also continuing to figure out additional payments for subsidy providers, what else can we do for them, and connecting out-of-work childcare teachers with job openings. So there may be a number of emergency childcare centers popping up in school districts or where there's not a huge supply at the moment. And we want to make sure that any of those teachers who are at a childcare center or were at a childcare center that has closed, that they have access to those jobs. So through Work in Texas, there is going to be a job matching capability between childcare providers and out-of-work childcare teachers. And with that, I believe I will pass it back to Dale.
Thank you, Shay. Very good. And so just a couple more things. I wanted to come back in and just talk a little bit more about the Coronavirus Aid and Relief and Economic Securities Act, or the CARES Act, and particularly because there are some business provisions that many of you may know about. I've seen some questions about it already, but one of them that I think may be important for some of you to look into is the employee retention credit for employers subject to closure due to COVID-19. And these credits allow for refundable payroll tax for 50% of wages paid to employees during this time frame of the COVID-19 crisis. So it depends, even whether or not you are fully or partially suspended your operations due to COVID-19, and you have gross receipts that declined by more than 50% when compared to the same quarter in the last prior year, you may be eligible to take advantage of this particular program for the tax credit. Slide. And the way this credit works is, again, it's based on qualified wages. It's available for employers with greater than 100 full-time employees, as well as for employers with 100 or fewer full-time employees. And the credit is provided for the first $10,000 in compensation. And again, the wages, as I understand it right now, is it only covers wages between March 13, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. For more information, we do recommend that you contact the IRS and discuss specifics on them, but also I understand that you can file for this tax credit via your Form 941s or the IRS Form 7122. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we are definitely interested in helping businesses. We see a number of businesses locally who are transitioning their work into covering, maybe doing face mask manufacturing or ventilators manufacturing, or any other number of ways that you all as businesses are working to be creative and assist during this pandemic period in changing your operations. If you need to hire individuals, like we know some employers are already doing so, we encourage you to use the workintexas.com system. Again, as I said, it's online 24/7, and it's available to for both job seekers and for employers to look at the job opportunities that are still available now. And there is also a mobile feature to this as well. Slide. Okay. In addition, we have an ongoing program that assists small business workers with training and the small businesses themselves. So if you have employees that are typically full-time, or you've reduced their work hours or laid them off or furloughed, and you'd like them to get some skills training that they can then use when they come back to work, we encourage you to take advantage of the small business training programs. These programs are available through, in this area, it'd be Austin Community College, or if you're outside of the area, it may be any of the 50 community college districts across the state. But they typically have courses that are available for very short term, and many of them can be done online or virtually. And it's an opportunity for those employees to upskill while they're waiting to come back to work. And we just had a conference call with our colleges and workforce boards yesterday, and encourage them to begin posting new opportunities that they have for training, and to encourage businesses to take advantage of these opportunities. So, right now we're talking about $1,800 in training costs for new employees. So it depends on what you need them to take. It may or may not cost that much. Those courses are generally very affordable. And so it could be 100% covered through this grant program that we provide to businesses across the state, and the funds goes directly to the community colleges to pay for that training. Think of it as a scholarship program, so to speak. And for existing employees, like $900. So, and tuition and fees covered. So we just want you to think about that. If you're an employee seeking training for your an employer seeking training for your employees, it's a great program for you to explore. I'll also add that we'll be rolling out some new initiatives soon that will allow for job seekers who were formerly attached to an employer or furloughed, reduced hours, et cetera, to also receive training directly as well. Likely through the same process in terms of going to a community college and signing up for the courses that they have available. Next slide. Okay. And if you have specific questions about the Skills for Small Business program, I'd ask that you reach out to Matt Snydecki, and his information is on the screen. Or you can go to our website, texasworkforce.org/skills for small business, and the application is available there online now that you can complete as an employer for your employees to get them into some training that you think will be beneficial to you all as you continue your production or of the work that you need them to do. Slide. Aside from Matt, we have these additional staff across the state that can answer and assist with questions, and they are listed here. So feel free. I mean, what we wanted to do is make sure that we have opportunities for, if you're having difficulty reaching Matt or TWC directly, if you reach out to any of these individuals, they'll work to assist you as much as possible as well. They're designated for certain areas, and you'll see here in the Austin area, we've got Marlene Drakes covering this area in particular, but any of our team members here can answer questions. So they're all ready to work with you to answer questions and to help get you to the right place. Next slide. Finally, I'd like to again, mention that we have an employer representing, a commissioner representing employers, and his name is Commissioner Aaron Demerson. Strong background in economic development, and now, and formerly in this position as the Office of Employer Initiative, and now a commissioner of the agency. So well, I say that to highlight the fact that his main interest is employers. How do we help employers through this time and any time that you may need assistance? His office has attorneys that are man the hotline, that the number is there, and they can answer very specific questions for you as an employer about any of the laws that as it relates to unemployment insurance, paid sick leave, FMLA, those kinds of things that you may have that we're not able to answer here today, but that hotline is available. And so I encourage you to call Commissioner Emerson's office at 1-800-832-9394. That's 1-800-832-9394, and seek additional information or questions you may have about particular cases that you're dealing with. Slide. And again, just kind of reiterating these last couple of slides, U.S. Department of Labor, again, the Office of Occupational Safety and Health Administration, this is OSHA, has some really great information on workplace safety. Again, I encourage you all, as you think about how to make your workplaces safer for when employees return to work, or if they're currently working and you need to look at what can you do to minimize exposure to COVID-19, their resources are very, very helpful here. And I'll also point out that the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has taken time to really provide some guidance to employers with regard to the American with Disabilities Act and other laws that protect individuals with regard to employment. And so they've put a really good guidance out as well, and I encourage you all to look at that as you consider your options for handling the situation as you continue to have employees, or consider hiring people and how you may go about doing that. Really good resources on teleworking as well there, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. Slide. And finally, I noted most of what we in some cases we referred to programs that we don't manage at the state level, particularly here at the Texas Workforce Commission. But what we're doing is we're going to the source where that information is available. We encourage you to do the same. So the Small Business Administration, the SBA, has put out a very good guide to small businesses and their loan resources. So if you're interested in information about the EIDL, the Emergency Disaster Loan Programs, or the Paycheck Protection Program, I cannot recommend a higher level source than going to the SBA directly, and they're updating their guidance and being as responsive as they possibly can be, as I can tell. And then the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, like your local chamber as well, Austin Chamber, has great resources as well for small businesses, and I would recommend that you take time. They're really easy to go through. I'm able to go through them and get some information. So I think that I would expect you guys can go through it as well and get as much information as you can, and they keep those things updated. Slide. And stay up to date. TWC continually is putting out new information. For instance, we were releasing press releases to inform folks that the pandemic unemployment insurance payment started, for instance, this last weekend, and what's going on with that, the updates, or the expansion of our hours, going from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. All that information continues to come out. And then as we get new information from our state and national partners, federal partners, we're providing that information to you all as well. And so we're using all the means possible, all the social media formats, the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We've had some Facebook Live with our executive director at Cerner, and those I think have been helpful for individuals to be able to talk directly to him about what they're facing and any questions they may have. So I encourage you to continue to stay in touch with us. Slide. And finally, I'll give you my information. If you have questions, feel free to contact me directly. We also have set up a special mailbox for small businesses, and that emails can be sent to that for small business c19@twc.state.tx.us. Again, that's small biz c19@twc.state.tx.us. If you have questions, some of the questions we may not be able to answer here today, you'd send them there. We'll get them to the right people in the TWC that can assist you. Again, that's it from me on slides today, and I'll be open for questions. Tamara?
Yeah, thank you so much, Del and Shay. I appreciate the comprehensive information that you just provided. It was very helpful in outlining what available resources small businesses can utilize. I did want to comment in on a couple of items. First, there were a lot of questions related to will we be able to have these slides provided. The Chamber is going to provide both this recording and the slides. So you'll have that sent out to you for all of those who are currently dialed in, so that information will be available to you. The other item that I wanted to ask for is there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom. And so we're asking that questions be submitted via the Q&A. If possible, we really would appreciate if you could provide your name. That allows for the follow-up. So any questions that we're unable to answer live today, the Chamber is notating those and they are following up. And so to have your name would be very helpful. Of course, if you're uncomfortable providing your name, we are still accepting the anonymous questions as well, and all the materials will be provided back out at a later time. I'm going to start with the Q&A, and again, Shay and Del, I want to thank you for your willingness to stay on and answer questions. This is very important. I'm going to start with one on work share employees. So the question reads, are work share employees eligible to receive both up to the 40% unemployment benefit plus the $600 stimulus, or is the $600 stimulus only available to employees who are laid off or furloughed?
So the question, thanks for the question, Tamara, and for the questioner. So as we understand it, the workers who are receiving shared work are eligible for that pandemic unemployment, the additional $600 as well. And what was the other part of the question?
So they wanted to make sure is the $600 stimulus only available to employees who are laid off or furloughed? Okay, right. So it's available to those individuals who are on shared work and for those who are laid off and furloughed. And additionally, individuals who are self-employed and independent contractors may also be eligible for that payment as well. We encourage everyone to apply for those benefits. Okay, this next one's slightly technical, so I understand if you guys want to defer this for a written response, so just let me know, Shandell. But this one is, and again, it's another work share program. So the work share program where some of our essential employees are kept on staff at 10 to 40% reduced hours. Will they be eligible for only 10 to 40% of their weekly max benefit, or $521, or whichever is higher?
So we understand that shared work pays 10 to 40% of the weekly benefit amount. And so you do not get the full work benefit amount when you're on the shared work program. So you won't get the $512 or $21. It'll depend on what you qualify for based on the shared work. So,
okay, so it's a percentage-based allocation.
Exactly.
Yep, okay, great. So the next one that I wanted to go down to is for independent contractors applying for unemployment. Are these workers, and I think you addressed this actually in your summary, but just let's re-clarify. Independent contractors applying for unemployment, are these workers required to put in their last employer? Will the listed employer be required to pay additional unemployment taxes at a later time for their 1099s?
So it really depends on what the base period is that the unemployment insurance will look for. And if you had an employer in that time, they may be looking at that employer. But if it's outside of that period, looking at your the base period wages, it may be just looking at what you earned as an independent contractor. So it really depends on what base period is being looked at to determine your eligibility for unemployment insurance. So again, that's a question you would go through the process, answer the questions that are asked during the claims filing process, and then they would let you know what you would be eligible for by once you complete that initial process.
Yep. Thank you, Del. And on this next one, I recognize that the time frame associated is not exact, but on average, I just lost the question. Let me get back to it. On average, how long is it taking for the first checks to go out for people who are filing for unemployment for the first time?
Well, I think it does depend. I can tell you that payments are going out. We've had people say they hadn't received payments, but payments started really in earnest about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, because of the claims that have been coming in due to COVID-19. So I can't give you a specific time frame, but they're going out now. So if you've already filed a claim and done the other steps in the process, it shouldn't be long before you get payments.
No, I appreciate that. The next one is, if an employee's salary is reduced, but not their hours, will shared work supplement?
That's a good question.
Thanks.
I think I would want to defer that one to the employee, to the shared work department. So if you would send me that question, because the thing is, well, I see Jonathan Packer. I don't know whose name's Renee, but you know, because if you haven't reduced their hours, but you've reduced their salary, the possibility, the shared work program looks at reduction in hours, which presumes a reduction in salary as well, because you're working fewer hours and then supplementing that. So if the hours are not reduced, I have to say I'll defer to UI. So if you would allow us to get back with you on that particular question, I'll ask our UI shared department to provide us a very clear answer.
So again, everyone, just want to re-notate that we are taking any questions that we need to defer into the parking lot. We will get answers posted and back centered back out to everyone else. If a business is closed and was unable to get a PPP loan, will the owner or partner of the business, can they apply for unemployment? And the same question for the sole proprietor of the business.
Yes, they should apply because of the CARES Act again, the pandemic unemployment compensation, pandemic unemployment assistance, unemployment insurance. Just about everyone may be eligible, including owners, independent contractors, self-employed individuals. So you should apply for unemployment insurance.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this next one. Let's see. One second. This is the one I wanted to get to. I am a small restaurant that's had to close temporarily. In the last 7 years, I've had one small unemployment claim, thereby affording me the lowest UI rate possible. With my closing, I've now had about 15 legitimate claims that are going to significantly raise my payroll UI rates. Is there anything being done, or is there anything I can my exposure next year for my UI rates?
So my understanding and the information that we've shared is that employers who had to lay off employees now due to COVID-19 will not have their rates impacted because of COVID-19 layoffs. Okay.
No, thank you. That's
no increases in chargebacks. Right.
That is helpful. Is K-1 income considered wages? And if not, why not? Since many business owners only take K-1 as their compensation.
So first I've had to ask the clarification, what are K-1 wages? But I will say this, in general, if what the unemployment insurance does is that they ask you to submit a claim for unemployment insurance indicating your status and the wages you've earned. And I suppose it's K-1, 1099, it does, you just have to share that information. If you have no wages to report, my understanding is that the minimum that anyone will get as a small business or owner, sole proprietorship, independent contractor is $207 a week. And you may get that amount until you're able to provide additional information about the wages that you've earned. So maybe it's a K-1 or 1099, and that may increase your benefit. And you will have up until December 26, 2020 to provide that additional information about wages you may have earned. So my answer right now is file for unemployment insurance. You may likely be qualified and eligible. They will ask about how you've earned wages and in what form, and you'll provide that information, and then they will take that into consideration.
There's a second part of that question that I want to make sure that we also address. And it was basically asking if they have separate EIN company and separate EIN locations, can they file under each of those?
That's an interesting question. I don't know for the individual filing into each one of those or for their employees at each one. So we'll have to come back to you on that question. I think we need more information about what you specifically mean about filing under each one of those.
Okay. So this one I think is an important one, because I think you talked, Dale, about training when you were presenting earlier, and it's what types of training in small business training programs?
It will vary, the type of training that's available. So, you know, some folks, I talked to Austin Community College, for instance, today, and they were talking about putting together an online training in software development that they have available. They're converting to an online and maybe compressing that. We've talked to others who are looking at specific COVID-19 OSHA safety courses. We know others that have available right now the training in social media. So it varies, it depends, you know. We try to make sure the training that we will support and pay for are those that will directly benefit the business. So, you know, it should be related to the business needs. And it also should be something that the college has available on their course catalog that's, you know, really off the shelf, quick to deliver. So it might be a continuing education course that's, you know, 6 weeks or long, or it could be a semester long course, you know, longer than that potentially. So, but, you know, so it'll vary, but we want to emphasize that the training that we're encouraging the colleges to develop, if they don't have it already, are those training that we know and that we're hearing from businesses that they need their employees to have. That answers the question.
Thank you. One question out here is, do church employees qualify for the SSB program?
Church employees. So if they're a small business, and we're making some exceptions now, typically we have focused on for-profit entities or nonprofit hospitals as eligible partners in the grant. So it's quite possible that a church employee, I guess it would fall under a nonprofit entity, could apply for benefits under the Skills for Small Business program. And I'll make sure that is clear. I don't think we've had that question before. So.
Okay. And then Shay, this one might be for you. Did I hear something about a 25% increase for subsidized children? If so, is it essential worker children only?
Yes, there have been a couple of questions about the 25% increase. So it is for active referrals in your subsidy program for open childcare providers. So essential workers or those who are receiving the essential worker subsidy or the regular subsidy because they were already an essential worker, all are 25%. The reimbursement rate is increased by 25%.
Okay, thank you. They did clarify, just for your reference, Dale, that the K-1 income was in relation to PPP forgiveness.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But I think my answer still applies to report it and go from there.
Okay. I work for a corporation that has child care centers. Both are closed. I draw 1/2 of my salary from one and 1/2 from my other. Can I file on both places?
All right. Is that a child care question? I'm not sorry.
I think it's really an unemployment. Can I
Okay.
draw unemployment from 2 different child care centers, since I draw salary from each of them, half from one and half from the other, even though it's for the same corporation?
Yeah. So I mean, unemployment is based on the wages you've earned during a period. So all your sources of income would be considered for the period that we are looking at to see when you earned wages and what ages you earn. So if you earned it from 2 different sources, but the same corporation, I think it'll all be considered. You'll just report where you work and how much you earned, and then they'll take it from there.
Okay. It says, in childcare, we've had to reduce the hours of the workers from 8 hours to 6 hours. Can they claim the offset of that loss? So basically, they've had a reduction of hours, so they're going to get a reduced salary value. Can they claim for the difference of that reduction?
I think that sounds like it could fall under the potentially the tax credit program potentially. Child care workers have to reduce their hours for workers. Yeah, they potentially can. They also should maybe look into whether those hours equate to at least 10% of the workers' hours, and maybe look at the shared work program.
Okay, thank you. Do hair salons fall under the small business, and can they qualify for the SSB program?
Yes. So they would be considered a small business as well, and they could apply on behalf of their employees for training.
Okay. One question is from a parent view. Can they get any relief because they're agreeing to pay is supporting a child care business? So I think that's really about, you have childcare, a parent is choosing to continue to pay a childcare business, and they are looking to see if they qualify for any relief related to that, even though that childcare business is unable to actually provide support right now.
I see. We do not have any programs to support that at this time.
Okay. If an employee quits because they're afraid to come to work, are they able to file for unemployment since they voluntarily chose not to go to work because they were fearful due to COVID-19?
Well, anyone could apply for unemployment as long as they're willing and able to work and look for work. And then at that point, we're still investigating claims. So someone would contact the employer to determine why that person is no longer working. And so you would have a responsibility as the employer to report what the conditions were, et cetera, and before determination is finally made. So they may apply.
Thank you. I think the same would apply to nonprofit employees. Do they qualify for unemployment and benefits since they don't qualify under normal circumstances?
Yes, they do now because of the CARES Act and the pandemic unemployment compensation programs.
That's excellent. Thank you. We're just going to take one more question. Again, I want to reiterate that all the questions will be followed up upon because we recognize the importance of helping everyone get the answers that they need. And so let me see as I walk through and make sure. Yes, again, the slides will be provided. Do any of the programs impact the Paycheck Protection Program loan taken by employer and loan forgiveness?
So one of the things you may want to look at, I looked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has some information about the employee tax credit and that how that impacts the PPP or the Paycheck Protection Program. And so I would encourage you all to look at that. The initial reading indicates that there may be an impact between the Paycheck Protection Program and the employer tax credit for wages for people who are working during this time frame. So do definitely look at that, because one gives you an offset tax credit and one other gives you money to continue paying folks. So there might be an offset there. But I would say look at the information that's on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on the link I provided and on the SBA site, because they discuss those two programs and how they play. But as far as other programs that we've talked about at TWC, if someone is separated, yes, they could qualify or could qualify for unemployment insurance. If they're still working, likely not, unless they're unsure at work or have some kind of reduced hours and so forth. So it will depend on those, but I think particularly those two federal programs you want to look at and see how they interplay with one another.
No, I appreciate that, Dale. So again, I apologize, but we are at the top of the hour. We want to be sensitive to everyone's schedule and time. I appreciate again, Shay and Dale, to support this conversation, to provide the answers to the questions and the materials that you provided. We appreciate that. Again, I just want to express for myself personally, I appreciate the difficulty that everyone is facing right now. I thank the Chamber again for their willingness to support these types of communication avenues. I'm going to turn it back over to Quaylon.
Thank you, Tamara. We will post the slides and recap of this webinar. And as Tamara has mentioned, we will try and answer the rest of the questions as soon as possible. So please check our recap and the the rest of the answers to the questions on the Chamber blog, maybe sometime mid of next week. And I'd like to thank Tamara, Shay, and Dale, as well as the Austin Chamber team who helped put this webinar together. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. And as you can see, we do have another webinar tomorrow with Senator Ted Cruz. So please do go to the Austin Chamber events website for the Power Up and Pulse and Policy webinars that we have scheduled in the coming weeks. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.